So here I'm going to try to explain the decision making process. Right now, I call it. I have created this Excel sheet which contains these three, separate sheets in it, and this is how the whole decision making process will be done. Right. So I call it the decision making process sheet. Now the whole idea of using this particular process is only to be applied when you are facing a particularly challenging decision, a particularly challenging, you know business decision, most likely. Right. So if there is a particular business decision that you need to make, and it's fairly, important, and might have, long term consequences based on it, on your business, and you are feeling a little bit unsure on how to, you know but on the basis of what are you going to make the decisions, or whether you are really clear or not. If you are facing this uncertainty uh, on regarding that decision, in such a situation you can make use of this particular process. So I'm going to explain how to use this now. The first sheet is called the decision making sheet, right? So in this first sheet, what you're going to do is you're going to just write down the statement in one sentence or two sentence at max. What is the decision that you need to make? Right? What is it about? Like you're explaining somebody who does not know what problem you are facing. So just write it down. So it is more likely to be something like, I need to decide whether to choose A or choose B for this particular, you know, job, or something like that, or a particular scenario, let's say, something like that, right? So it will be something on those lines. Now, once you have written this out, and it's very important that when you are using this particular process, this decision making process, as I call it, you follow every single step that I teach in this tutorial. All right, it's very, very important that you follow every single step of it and do not skip ahead. So first of all, you write it down. Now, writing down, what it will do is it will give you the clarity. When in your mind you are thinking about the decision, it seems too chaotic, too big, too gigantic. But when you write it down in a simple one liner sentence, suddenly it looks simpler, you know, and a lot of chaos can be, destroyed by just writing stuff down. It's so powerful. So you need to write it down. And it is also important to write down because we need to do a lot of analysis from this particular statement. So it's very, very important that we have clearly written what decision making problem we are facing, for what, right? So that is decision to be made. Now, for almost every decision, you will probably have in your mind some options that you are, thinking, like whether to do this, whether to do that. And the whole dilemma of decision making is you cannot choose which option to actually choose, right? So what we are going to do, we are going to choose the best option, the most likely best option, right? Now, options could be two, options could be three, options could be more than three, right? It could be any. But for most situations, there will be more or less two to three options that are immediately in your head. If you have more options in your head, more than three, you can always increase the number of options like this just by selecting and dragging it down. Otherwise, it is better to stick to three options, right? Because it's much easier to analyze and find out which is the best one if you have three top options in your mind, right? So let's work with three options. So maybe the first option is something. So, right, I need to decide whether to choose A or B or particular situation. What option? I can choose A, which is a particular decision, or I can choose B, or I can maybe choose C or something like that. So I'm just giving you an example. Let's make it a little bit clear, right? So I'm not going to give very simple example. I can't decide whether to buy eggs or chicken for dinner. right? So option A would be I can buy chicken, I can buy eggs, I can buy fish, something like that, right? Now this is basically what it comes down to it, right? Simply stuff like that. Now once you have clearly written down the options, go to the pros and cons analysis sheet. Now what is pros and cons? Let me explain to you what is pros and cons. Probably you have heard of the term, it's a very common term, but just for the sake of explaining what I'll just explain it to you, right? Now pros and cons means you're just weighing. Pros means what are the positive consequences that might happen if you take one option, and cons means what are the possible negative consequences that might happen if you take that option, right? That's what pros and cons are. Pros means positive, cons means negative, right? So we already have selected three options. Now what we're going to do is we are going to analyze the pros and cons of every one of these options. So if you have two options, you are going to fill two of this checklist, columns. And if you have three, then you're going to go for all of it, right? Three. If you have more options, you can create another, just copy it and, create another one of this checklist, right? The pros and cons checklist, right? So here we have it. Now let's begin. So in option one is I can buy chicken, right? So your option one could be something like this. So once you have this, you can just copy this one and paste it here. Okay, I can buy chicken. Option two, I can buy eggs. You can paste it here. And option three, I can buy fish, right? And paste it here, right? Now, what could be the possible positive consequence? So if I buy chicken, maybe wife will be happy. I'm just giving an example, right? If I buy chicken, maybe the price is low in the market, so maybe it's a bit inexpensive, right? Now if you buy chicken, what are the you are just trying to here in pros, you are just trying to see what could be the possible positive consequences that can happen if you take the option, right? So price is low in the market, wife will be happy, can eat for, can create variety of recipes or stuff like that. I'm not going to give any more examples because I guess you get it. So write down any amount of pros, think long term and think what could be the possible positive consequences that can happen if you are going to take the option. Think about not just a week from now, not just 2 weeks from now. You can think about months from now, 6 months from now, even in the long term. What could happen? All the positive consequences, right? What could be the cons, right? The cons could be a little boring dinner, because maybe I have chicken every day, so it'll be a little boring. It'll be the same thing. Maybe kids are not going to be happy because they want fish or something like that. So write down all the possible negative consequences, right? Something like that. So you can buy eggs. So what similarly for this, you can write down what are the pros of buying eggs, right? Cheap, uh, high protein, whatever, right? I'm not judging things like stuff like that. Just write all the pros and all the cons for this one also, and all the pros and all the cons for this one also, right? So maybe for eggs, the cons will be like again, maybe a little boring, right? Because eggs are also too common. Maybe for fish, it is actually interesting. New dishes, right? Something like that. Or maybe new dishes, yeah, something like that. Healthy for skin or something like that. They call it the omega-3 oil is better. I don't know. So, and what is the cons? Maybe allergic for kids or something like that. Hard to create exotic recipes, something like that. No, just write them down. So once you have all the pros and cons written down, now look through all of them and find out which option A, option B, or option C, right? Which option has the maximum number of pros as in positive consequences, and the least amounts of cons, and which option has the maximum amount of cons and the least amounts of pros, right? Now, basically, this will give you which is the best option, analytically and logically speaking, right? So if you have one option which has a lot of cons and very less pros, you know that choosing this option will land you into more trouble than it will benefit you. And if you have an option which has lots of pros and very little cons, you will know that it will land you into more benefit than it will land you into trouble. So it will become very, very easy to choose the best option. So once you have chosen the best option, you can move to final choice, this shape. Here you write down which option you have chosen. I have chosen to eat by maybe chicken, right? Something like that. Now, what are the top 3 challenges in implementation of the chosen option? So probably you have chosen an option and you have written it down, and you are quite confident because you are seeing that, okay, the pros and cons looks nice, but now there is another thing. Even if a particular option has a lot of pros and very little cons, still there will be certain cons, right, which could be problematic if they really happen, right? Let's say if you choose fish, maybe they're allergic for kids. So what are you going to do if your kids do get allergies, right? And what are you going to do if you are not able to create exotic recipes? What are you going to do? So you still need to solve these problems, even if this option is the best option, right? Maybe if you choose fish, right? So what are you going to do? So write down the top 3 challenges that you might face while implementing this particular option that you have chosen. Challenges that you still might face. What could be? Think ahead and think of all the problems that might come up and write them down. Write them down in priority if possible. Write down like which is the most important challenge or the most dangerous challenge that might happen, the second most dangerous, and the third most dangerous challenge, and in order would be the best thing to do. Now solve them. Once you have a particular challenge, let's say if you have chosen fish, so the challenge one is allergic to kids, right? Now the fish is not allergic to the kids are allergic to fish, right? The kids are allergic to fish. So what are you going to do if your kids do get allergic to fish, right? Just get the spelling right. Yeah. Now, what are you going to do? So number 1, consult a doctor beforehand, giving them fish to eat. That is number 1 you can do. You can still buy a fish. You can still conduct their family doctor before you actually give them the fish. That can take the fear away. Second, have medicines beforehand in case they still get allergic. And third, maybe keep a doctor ready at hand or something like that, so that if they do need to get hospitalized or something like that, right? So these are just simple ideas that I'm coming up. So what are you going to do to solve these challenges? Now all this will ensure that the option that you have chosen, not only you are ready to implement it, but even if some problems happen, you still have plans ready to deal with them. Now after all this, you still might think like, oh, okay, everything looks nice and right, but I still am not sure that whether option 2 or option 3 was the one I should have taken or not, even if there are some final doubts regarding whether you should really buy fish or not, right? So the option you have chosen or not, you just write down what are the final doubts you have, if you have them. So write down, I still think chicken is better because it's safe for kids, something like that. So what is the solution? The solution is, I'll buy some chicken along with fish too, yeah, that's the best backup. So probably I'll buy 70% fish and 30% chicken. That way, if I really change my mind, I can just give the kids chicken, right? Simple. So this is how you use the decision making process sheet. So just replace all the chicken, eggs, and fish stuff with your business issues, and and follow the process step by step as I have mentioned, and I guess you'll be able to make the right decision, right? So I hope it helps. Bye bye. See you later.